Mediation is the clearest way of explaining that any representation we see in the media is not a straightforward reflection of reality. The way to look at this is a process, almost like a machine. We know that people and things exist in reality. And by that I mean individuals, maybe a celebrity, groups of people or ways of breaking down society into different groups, young and old, black and white, male and female. It could be a place, it could be an issue, it could even be an event. But all of these things exist in reality and they will be changed by the media. And this is why I look at the media as a machine. Maybe not as complicated as this one, but certainly a machine with workings of its own inside. And we'll talk about what those workings are in a minute. Once that thing in reality, that person, that group of people, that issue or event has been through the media machine, it comes out the other end as a representation. And whilst the media has changed that thing that exists in reality, we don't have to accept entirely what the media has done to it. The audience will decode the representation in one of three positions, as Stuart Hall said. They'll either take the preferred reading and agree with the points of view of the media, or they'll take the oppositional reading and reject the point of view of the media, or somewhere in between, which is what we call the negotiated reading. Anyway, so let's have a look at what goes on inside this machine. As we've discussed, there are really three processes that happen inside the media machine: selection, organisation, and focus. And these are really quite simple, but to explain this, I'm going to use an example. The example I'm going to use, the thing that exists in reality, is a recent event that was on the news quite a lot, Hurricane Sandy on the east coast of America, which mainly hit New York. So this was an event that happened. We knew it happened. It's something that happened in reality. However, unless we actually visited New York, unless we were there at the time, none of us experienced this. In fact, most of us would have experienced this purely from the media. And therefore, our experience of it has been mediated. So let's have a look at some of the things the news would have done. First of all, selection. Well, what decisions have to be made to present the idea and the event of a hurricane happening on the news? There would have been several factors. What footage to use from the hurricane? What interviews to use with people who were affected by the hurricane or weather experts? What information are you going to give out about the hurricane in terms of its causes, its impact? And what tone are you going to use for presenting this event? Are you going to make it seem like a terrible tragedy? Are you going to present it as if something hopeful can be done about the hurricane? So that's your first thing, selection. And I've just picked a handful there, but obviously, as you can imagine, there are lots and lots of elements to select from this world event. Next one is organisation. Maybe not so many choices here, but obviously once you've decided on the footage, the interviews, the information, the tone that you're going to use to represent this event, you need to edit the story together. Editing stories together can dramatically change them. And then, of course, if you're going to put it on a half-hour news broadcast, you need to decide which item on the news is going to be. I'm sure that in America at the time, it probably was top of the news, the first item. Whereas here in Britain, it probably was second or third with the rest of the international news. And this, again, these choices change the context and change the representation of that event. The last element, focus, perhaps changes the representation of Hurricane Sandy entirely. There are so many choices that are available to the broadcasters about this. Do you focus on elements such as loss of life, destruction of property, the clear-up mission, the environmental impact, or even the economic impact? All of these different elements to focus on can change the representation of that event. And hopefully, if you can see how these three different processes happen within the media, you can see that a representation of Hurricane Sandy could have been very, very different had different choices been made. And that's why we must always analyse the representation of any event, person, issue, place or group of people. All representations are always mediated.